I would say the greatest myth out there, I'd massage that quote a little bit and say the greatest trick environmentalists ever pulled was convincing the world oil was bad. Because truly the modern world was built on oil, on American oil.
Welcome back to the Money Seat Podcast. My guest today is RJ Burr, Senior VP of Corporate Operations at Panex. Panex is one of the independent producers in the oil industry out of Bowling Green, Kentucky. RJ, welcome to the show.
Hi, Gabe. How are you doing tonight?
Fantastic. RJ, in a nutshell, introduce us to Panex.
Well, Panex is one of the roughly 9,000 independent producing oil and gas companies in the country. Most people, when you look at the oil and gas industry, most people don't realize who the true American oil and gas industry is. And look at the price crash in 2020. If you went out and grabbed the average person and said, how did that affect the oil companies? Most people would say, it's Shell, it's Exxon, they can handle it. When in truth, yeah, they could handle it. It did hurt them. However, they're not American oil. 83% of the oil, 90% of your natural gas produced, and more than 90% of the wells drilled are drilled by the roughly 9,000 independent companies that average 12 employees or less. We happen to be amongst that selective group.
That's incredible. I was quite surprised when I first heard that stat because most people like myself, I don't know much about the oil industry. The only names I come across are the names I see on TV, right? Like you mentioned Shell or BP or Exxon and that. But
Yeah.
you're saying the vast majority, 83% of the oil and gas is produced by small companies.
Yeah, no, it's really when you look at it's history. I mean, when you go back through and you watch the evolution of the oil industry, the modern world truly did not begin until 1859, until the first oil well was drilled. And once oil was introduced to our lives, the human condition changed dramatically over the following decades. Well, your major oil companies, once oil got its hold, all of a sudden they had to look for bigger pools. And so they started moving overseas. And what you had left is, and really that was, that goes back into OPEC being formed in 1960 and about the balance of power in the oil industry over the last, say, 100 years. But it's fascinating because most people don't realize the impact that oil plays in their day-to-day life. I really do believe you could grab the average American in any city and heck, I'd bet everything I own that they'd probably have at least two products of oil on them and most likely wouldn't know about it. From plastics to makeup to, I mean, there's roughly 6,000 products made from one barrel of oil. And so it's become ingrained in every facet of our lives. And the scary thing is that most people, one, don't realize it, but two, with the push towards alternative energies like they've been, and you can't deny there's been a push. You were talking about the only companies you see are the Exxons, the Shell, and the BP. Chances are you saw them in a commercial about them producing alternative energies. And the scary thing is right now there is really nothing to replace oil with. I mean, you can look at. I mean, don't take my word for it. You can do your own research, but you can dig through and see that they discovered the first solar panel 150 years ago. If they hadn't figured it out by now, they're not going to figure it out. Because you can't predict how long the sun's going to shine. I mean, you can't put a pencil to it. Same with solar power, wind power. There's nothing out there right now that can effectively replace oil, and so that's going down a whole nother rabbit hole. But when you look at the oil industry in America, and we were talking about ways to protect your money and ways to people look at having a steady job and a good income. Back in the day, they used to carry you through and until the end. But now you have to have supplemental income because heck, things are just getting to cost so much. Well, what do you think one of the main factors of that cost is? It's energy.
Cost of energy, yeah.
And that's the bottom line of everything. If it costs more to produce, and it costs more to use, and it costs more to consume, it's going to cost more in every other aspect of your life. And when there's nothing, I mean, just kind of you look at the train wreck coming. We call it an American oil crisis because there is a train wreck coming, and it's all self-inflicted. When you look at consumption. Right now, we consume roughly 10 to 15 million barrels a day more than we produce. They expect that number to be roughly 30 million barrels by 2030. So we're consuming more than we produce. Well, what about investment to replace that oil? Well, in 2014, we put over $900 billion worldwide in upstream investment to find more oil to replace what we produced. We're going to be lucky to get 400 billion this year. You had over a 60% drop in upstream investment. So we're consuming more than we produce. We're not investing enough to replace what we produce. Then you look at the alternative energies, and there's really nothing feasible that can replace oil. Well, heck, the only thing that would make prices go down is if demand goes down. Well, 17% of the world's population consumes 50% of the oil produced. 83% of the world's population is just now beginning to use oil. What do you think they're going to do? Do you think they're going to choose to live in the Stone Age or choose to utilize oil like we have? And so every indicator out there tells you that unless we find some miraculous new invention, unless some wizard of smart comes up with a new way to oil prices, 1 + 1 will always equal 2. And to think that it's not going to do what we're thinking it's doing, you're trying to tell me 1 + 1 = 3, because it's not there right now.
And so that leads me to my next question about the future of oil, because if you read the newspapers and the media, they all say, oh, the oil's coming to an end, it's going to be all green energy. But it sounds like from what you're saying is there's really nothing to replace oil. It sounds like the future of oil is pretty much in the numbers. There's nothing to really hurt the future of oil in the next, say, 10, 20, 30 years.
No, I mean, that you can't. I mean, it's too ingrained in our lives. I mean, that kind of walks into the discussion on climate change and on alternative energy and all that. And it's one that after I've looked into it, and I'm not one that don't tell me, show me, and I'm a pretty intelligent guy and I can understand it. And when you sit down and research the climate change argument, the only conclusion I came to is it's hard to argue against Santa Claus. When somebody's stated goal is to save the world, and you say you disagree with them, what, do you want everybody to die? That's the dynamics that they've set up. When in truth, I believe everybody has a little environmentalist in them. There's nothing I love more in the morning than opening my front door, looking at the big field in front of my house with the horses running, that's manicured, that's dialed in. Well, if that's not environmental, I don't know what is. I want it to look beautiful, pristine. I believe we all want that. And so for you to say that, that you're the only one that has the right to say, hey, I want to save the environment. Well, I put it to a test. If you truly do want to save the environment, yet your conclusion, your best way to do it is that we have to destroy the environment first, well, then you're not a serious person, and you don't deserve to be engaged with, because that's exactly what they want to do. If you were to make the changes they wanted to make, the green changes, if you wanted to put in solar, if you wanted to put in wind, if you wanted to go the whole ball of wax, throw it in there, we would have to rape Mother Earth like we have never raped her before for the raw material. Hey, do this for me. Get on the internet and type in oil field and hit images. And then open another window and type in lithium mine and hit images. And you tell me which one is destroying the environment. And so you look at that, and then you say, okay, hang on. What they want to do is destroy the environment to fix the environment, when the fact of the matter is the cleanest burning fuel we have is natural gas and nuclear. We already have most of the infrastructure built in natural gas. You could put converters on every car. You could run the pipeline straight to garages. You wouldn't have to go to the gas station anymore. You could do that. We already have most of that already in place. So they don't want to do that. Well, okay, well, what about nuclear? You mean to tell me we can run the most advanced subs on the planet on nuclear power, but we can't do it here? They're letting a movie from 40 years ago still scare them. And so there are solutions. There are things that do, if you truly believe that we're destroying the environment, there are things that you can do. It's just what they're asking us to do would cause more damage. And so I really just don't engage in the argument anymore, because it's not a real argument. It's a false argument.
Yeah, I agree with you. Yeah, I agree with you completely. And even on the political front, if you look at the economies of Germany or say the United Kingdom right now, where energy prices are increasing at a rapid pace, a lot of people who are at the bottom end of the economic ladder, they're having a hard time keeping up with their energy bills, because heating and gas is costing 2-3 times more because of all these various government restrictions and policies. And so there's a definite political cost as well.
Well, and they don't want to burn natural gas, and they don't want to buy it from Mino Vlad. However, you ask the German citizens, what's more environmental, burning natural gas to keep your homes warm, or clear cutting the forest like you've had to do. I mean, they literally had to clear cut some of their forest to burn for firewood to heat their homes. They're living back in the Stone Age because they want to save the environment. Well, ask the people what they prefer to do. I believe they prefer to use natural gas. And so it's just when you go down these strings of conversations, you're considered to wear a tinfoil hat, but it's just one of those that, well, look at it this way. We were talking a second ago, and you said, the only ones I'd seen are BP, Exxon, and all that. And I said they're most likely commercials about alternative energies. Well, it doesn't take a genius to find all this. It doesn't take a genius to get on the internet and research all this. If I can do it here in Bowling Green, Kentucky, anybody can do it. And so when you sit down and look at it, you'll come to the same conclusions I came to. And so that leads you to one question. Well, if your major oil companies are investing this much in alternative energy, knowing what you know, there's really only one of two reasons they could be doing it. Either one, they're altruistic. They truly believe their product is destroying the world, so they're willing to submarine their company, lose their stockholders' money, and wreck everything they've spent decades building, all in the name of saving the earth. Okay, who am I to say they're not doing that? They could be doing that. Or the second option is this. They know what I know. However, by putting all this money in alternative energies, they're going to, one, get social loving. Everybody loves somebody who wants to save the world. Two, they're going to get tremendous tax benefits. So there's going to be a financial gain there. But more importantly, the dirty little secret is, remember, they know what I know. When the illusion busts and they realize that there is no getting away from oil, how much is the oil they already have going to be worth at that point? So I don't know which one. I don't know which one they're doing. I know which one I think they're doing. But because you can't deny it. I mean, you really can't. Just go look at the numbers. To generate the amount of electricity that we use as a country through solar fields, it would take a solar field using the most modern solar panels available, the size of New Jersey, and it would require the sun to shine 365 days a year, 24 hours a day at Arizona summertime intensity. Does that sound feasible? No, it doesn't.
No,
and then you just look at the numbers from the government. These aren't my numbers. You look at the numbers from the government. They're projecting, because here's the lunacy of it. They're shutting down functioning, working power plants in hopes of replacing them with alternative energy plants. Well, they're shutting these factories down before they have a replacement. A growing industrial society should grow at anywhere from 3 to 4% a year in energy. Over a 10-year period, you should grow 30 to 40% more in your capabilities. They're projecting we're going to grow at 4% over the next 10 years by doing, well, we're not going to have enough. That's not taking into account the push for everybody wanting to go to electric cars. That we won't even get into lithium batteries and the junk they leave behind. But just look at California. Gavin Newsom comes out. You remember when he came out and made that big announcement, we're going to ban all combustion engines by 2035. And then literally came out the next day and said, well, hang on, don't charge your cars because we're going to have some brownouts and it's going to cause everybody to lose their power. That's the lunacy in which they're asking us to just walk in chin first. And so I kind of look at it, you take my company. We saw the train wreck coming. We saw a crash in prices coming here a couple of years ago, and we got aggressive and started making acquisitions. We've secured what we believe to be about 100 million barrels in reserve over the last 4 years, and now we're developing. And I was up at CPAC last year, and this kid came up to me and he goes, "Who do you want? You're the oil guy, aren't you?" And I said, "Yeah." He said, "Well, who do you want to win in 24? I said, "Well, it depends on what me you ask." He said, "What do you mean?" I said, "Well, if you ask the everyday me, the guy just like you, then I want Trump to win." And the reason I want Trump to win is because he understands something that for some reason politicians don't understand. He understands that oil prices have to be such that it makes it worth the oil companies going out and expending the risk and money to go get it. However, it can't be too high that it kills the consumer. I said, we found a sweet spot about $60 to $70. I said, so if you ask the everyday me, I want sanity return. And I'd be okay. I'm okay with $60 to $70 oil. However, if you ask the oil guy in me, I want Biden and them to win. He goes, really? Why? I said, because look, I want them to keep ESG scoring people. I want them to keep scaring people away from oil. I want him to run as many people away as he can. And while he's doing that, I'm going to keep buying it. And when the illusion busts and people realize we're not getting away from oil, the people that own are going to be sitting in a position of strength, aren't they?
So if
And
I hear,
that's really how I'm looking at it.
yeah, so if I hear you correctly, it sounds like right now is still a good time to get into oil as a long-term
Oh,
play. It sounds like this illusion hasn't really busted yet.
well, yeah. Well, I mean, and it's going to, because really every oil deal is essentially a long-term play. I mean, when you're investing in specific wells and they're producing, we got some wells that will produce for the next 30, 40 years. And that's the true upside my partners are looking at. If you have a well that's going to produce for 15, 20 years, what do you think oil prices are going to be 15 years from now? Well, if I'm showing you a potential 4-to-1 return and we're basing it at $80 oil, and oil goes to 120 10 years from now, and you have 10 more years worth of production, all of a sudden you just take that 4-to-1 and turn it to 6, 7-to-1. But the key is you have to know who you're getting involved with. I mean, nothing's easy. It's oil and gas. If anybody ever calls you and guarantees you something, they're lying to you. There are no guarantees. What we do that's a little different is we understand we love salt domes. And so we go into proven areas, and I'd love to say it's sexier than this, but we go into proven areas and we stand on the shoulders of giants and get what they left behind. We go into proven fields and develop them in ways that they've never been developed before. And the current area we're working on, when you hear people talk about the Strategic Petroleum Reserve, that's our salt dome. We own the roughly 2,000 acres surrounding it, the mineral rights to it. And when we originally purchased it, upon our first look at geology, we thought there's about 15, 20 million barrels sitting there. Well, then we went out and got roughly 40,000 different data sets on this land that have been created over the last 100 years. We did digitize them and put them in one spot, and all of a sudden, there could be 40, 50 million barrels sitting out here. Well, the
Wow.
final piece is we got the 3D seismic. And when we laid the 3D seismic over top of it, that was when our heads blew, because we're sitting on what we think is about 100 million barrels of oil. And all we're doing now is developing. And the last 2.5 years, we've been successful on 8 wells. And in those 8 wells, we found 38 different pay sands, different paste packages, and right at 1,300 feet of total pay sand. I mean, that's millions of barrels of oil. And we'll produce that over the next 20, 30 years. And we got another 200 wells to drill out here, just like the first 8. We're literally going in and directly offsetting production from years ago and getting what their geology shows us it's there. Their well reports show us it's there. Their logs show us it's there. All we're doing is going to get what they show us is there.
So tell me, if somebody is intrigued and somebody believes in the future of oil, what is the best way to get in on it? What's the best way to invest?
Well, when it comes to the industry in general, it's one of those deals. I know what I'm doing, and I don't know what anybody else is doing. Well, oil and gas is such a lucrative industry that, heck, you know what happens when you have something that's has the potential to make a lot of money. You have a lot of snakes in the business also. And so I rarely will I ever speak for somebody else because I don't know what they're doing. However, I do know what we're doing. Now, if you wanted to figure out how to get involved with us or just see what we're doing, the best thing I'd advise anybody to do, whether you get involved with us or not, is go to panex.us/learn. We specifically put that page together for individuals that had never invested in oil. It has our oil and gas 101, which is just basic, the concept of oil, what oil companies look for, what the oil is used for. Just gives you a basic education on oil 101. Oil 102 shows you the tax benefits. Oil and gas, when you invest directly in these wells, it is some of the greatest tax benefits out there. Now, everybody's a little different. I'm not a CPA. Don't set me in stone. I can give you a typical rule of thumb. But in general, you put 100,000 in one of our drilling programs, Uncle Sam's roughly going to pay for a third of it. And that's an above line deduction. You owe 150,000, Uncle Sam, you now owe 115,000. And that's why a lot of people invest in oil. Now, it's not the sole reason to invest in it, but man, it'd be stupid of me to not acknowledge that it's a benefit. And so that's why a lot of our partners look at oil. Most of them come fourth quarter is when we do a lot of our business. They'll utilize their money for the first 10 months of the year, talk to their CPA, see how much they owe on taxes, and they'll call me and put it in the drilling program. But like I said, the best thing you could do is go to panex.us/learn and look through there, because that'll give you a foundation of oil. But the key to anything is the people. I can sit here and quote crazy numbers. I can say, hey, I can make you 40 to 1 on your money. Well, if I'm not somebody that you believe you need to listen to, what difference does it make what numbers I tell you? That's the first thing you need to do, whether you get involved with us or anybody else. Make sure that you check that first box that they're people that you would break bread with. If they're not people that you'd be proud to know they're working for you, don't hire them, because character does mean something. And sure, you hate to say the world is like this, but track record does mean something, and longevity means something. And so make sure you're dealing with the right people first. Now, once you get that warm, fuzzy feeling about who you're dealing with, well, then you look at the economics of the deal. You look at your financial situation. What are you trying to accomplish? What are you trying to achieve with that money? My partners, they live in, I call it the three S's. They live in three piles of money. Their first pile is their sacred pile. That's the pile they pay their bills with. They take care of their family with. Nobody touches that money. The second pile is their safe pile. The safe pile, while they want it to grow, they have no problem if it doesn't grow. They just want to make sure that when they go back to it, there's just as much there when they left. Well, their third pile is their speculation pile. That's the pile they play with me on. That's the pile they want to make multiples. They want to go 2, 3, 4, 5 to 1 on their money. Well, the biggest shift that has happened here in the last couple of years is that safe pile. All of a sudden, a lot of my partners realize their safe pile isn't near as safe as they thought it was. That safe pile is where they put their precious metals, where they put their real estate, where they put their assets that they think is going to hold in value or grow. Well, I had a lot of partners that have a lot of money in silver. You remember the silver crunch here a couple of years ago when everybody realized there's more paper than there is silver? Well, I had several partners that have several million in silver certificates. All of a sudden, they call me freaking out because their safe pile is not as safe as it used to be. And so when you sit down and look at it now, if I didn't know the oil was where we're drilling, if I didn't know we were on top of it, you and I'd be having a completely different conversation. However, knowing that, I'll put it to you this way. Every well that we've got down and reached total depth, we put into production. We've had a few mechanical failures. However, we did hit oil on those wells, and we'll go back and re-drill them once we figure out how to get through the mechanical failure. But you're looking 8 of 11 wells in which we found oil on all 11 wells. So we're on top of the oil. Well, what is one product on the planet that everybody has to have and has a true, fair, balanced price? Well, if oil doesn't fit that category, I don't know what is. Everybody has to have it, and half the population wants it free, and the other half the population wants it $1 million a barrel. So you have two equally opposing forces pulling on every barrel of oil. So you're going to get a true value of what it's worth. Well, if you're sitting where your money's sitting in the rat race, and it's chaotic out there, it really is. You look at the stock market every day. Days that it should go down, it goes up. Days that it should go up, it goes down. There's no rhyme or reason to it. Well, if you want to get your money out of the rat race and park it for a couple of years, park it in oil. However, make sure it's what you want. Make sure it's meeting your investment goals before you do it. And that's just what I tell my partners. Look, if you're sitting in a position where you can park that money, park it in oil. That way you're at least going to get it back. If we're successful, you're going to get it back and make multiples on it, and you're out of the rat race. Let all this craziness settle out, because it will settle out. Grown-ups will return eventually. And whether it's, I don't even necessarily know if it's a Republican or Democrat, but eventually the chaos has to end. Eventually grown-ups have to return. And if it doesn't, then we got a whole lot more to worry about than these oil wells.
True. RJ, take me through at a high level, end to end. If somebody invests, let's say $100,000, right? Typical investment for an accredited investor. How is that $100,000 used?
Oh, it's the partners pay for the drilling of the wells. We pay for the completion. It goes into the location prep, the building pad, the bringing in the equipment, the purchase of basically the piping, everything you need to drill it, the paying of the crews to get out there and drill the well. We basically go through and the partners purchase a certain percentage of the well, and everybody pays their share. Our company pays for percentage we own. We have a few industry partners that own a percentage of it. I mean, everybody pays their pro-rata share, but that's what you're investing in. That's why you get the great tax benefits, is you're investing in the drilling of these wells.
And so if somebody invests, say, a certain amount of money, and then do they own a certain percent of the output of
Yes.
From a particular well?
Yes. Yeah. Like right now, we are drilling. We have a partnership. We just finished funding. We are selling 40% of 2 wells. These 2 wells, one of them is directly offsetting a well that we drilled about 2 years ago. Has 11 different pay sands, over 350 feet of sand. We're basically directly offsetting. It's a monster. It's the biggest well I've ever drilled. The second well they're offsetting is offsetting a well we drilled here about 3.5, maybe 4 months ago. This well had one pay sand in it that was about 112 feet thick, and with an additional 5 sands below it that we'll run through with the second well. And so the partners bought basically 40% of that. Well, the partners get 100% of that 40% until they have their at-risk money back in their pocket. We don't take a dime until you're cashed out. At that point, we back in for 25%. We split it 75-25.
Nice. Yeah, actually, that's a really good setup. So basically, the partners get paid first, and you don't get paid until the partners get their investment back.
Yes, sir.
That's fantastic. And then if somebody
that way, we're on the it's.
Like what I like to say is at that point, the interests are aligned, right? I like to say the interests are aligned. So your interests are, hey, let's get this thing producing so the investor gets their money back quickly, and that's when you get paid. So I like these types of setups where like everyone's interests are aligned and everyone gets paid on the same, the same way kind of thing. So that's a good setup.
If somebody's sitting in the boat with you, they're going to paddle a lot harder than somebody on the shore telling you how.
That's a good way to put it. Absolutely. So tell me, which parts of the U.S. are you currently drilling in?
We're currently drilling in Baton Rouge, Louisiana. That's the home base for our field operations. We have wells. We have 19 wells in Colorado. We had another handful of wells in Texas, but our main operations are in Baton Rouge right now.
And RJ, tell me a little bit more about your family history. It sounds like your family has been in the oil business for a few generations now.
Yeah, it's all we've ever done. My grandpa, my uncles. Now, my uncles are kind of like second grandpas. They're my mom was a baby boomer, but her youngest older brother was 21 years older than her, and her oldest brother was 26 years older than her. And so my grandpa, my uncles were in the business. My dad got in the business in 1973. My cousins are in the business. My brother's my partner. This is all we've ever done. I was on my first rig at 7 years old. Made my first sale 3 months after high school, and I haven't looked back. Like I said, this is all I ever wanted to do. Some kids got to grow up watching their dad practice law or practice medicine. I got to watch my dad do oil and gas. And I remember I walked out in that field. It was in middle of summer in Texas, hot. And we get to Luling, Texas, and I open the door, and there's this smell in the air. And now I know what the smell is, but back then I didn't know what oil smelled like. And it, for somebody who's never smelled it before, it's gross. And you smell, it's like, dude, Dad, what's that smell? He goes, baby, that's the smell of money. And so all of a sudden that smell stuck with me for the rest of my life. And when he took us out to the field, I saw this army of pump jacks, the little horses that go up and down.
Mm-hmm.
And I was hooked. And when I saw that, I just knew what I wanted to do. And I guess I was fortunate. Some guys have to spend decades trying to find their purpose. I knew mine at 7. And when I got in the business, my first day in the business, my dad, we were talking, well, this is kind of building up into it. He always told me, boy, if you can't fund your deals, if you don't have the ability to raise your own money, you will always be at the mercy of somebody else who can. And then on the flip side of that, if you cannot drill your wells cost effectively and find oil, again, you will always be at the mercy of somebody who can. And so we split the business up into two sides. One side of the business is the fundraising and management side. The other side of the business is the geological and field side. My first day in the office, my dad sat me down at a desk, put a big old phone book in front of me, handed me a script and a phone and said, have fun. And that was my introduction to the oil business and the work side of it. My brother's first day in the business a couple years later, he went straight to the field. And that's all we ever did. We spent the next 20 years honing our craft in those spots. And our first life in oil ended here, a little over 10 years ago, when Marathon Oil came in and bought our family's company. And we entered into early retirement. I was in my mid-30s. Took me about a month, maybe 2 months to realize I wasn't going to make the PGA Tour. And it took me a couple of years to finally go stir crazy. And it'll be 8 years ago in July. We all went stir crazy, and that was when we cranked up with Panex and started our second line. And since that point in time, we've drilled 38 partnership wells. We found oil on 36 of them, and we placed 30 of those 36 into production, and we'll end up re-drilling the other 6. So we've had 2 dry holes in 8 years, and so not a bad track record for our partners.
Absolutely. You know, that's a common story I hear out here in San Francisco in the Bay Area. You know, there's a movement called the FIRE movement, right? Financial independence, retire early. And most
Hmm.
people who retire, you know, they become wealthy in their late 20s, early 30s, and they retire. Most of them are back on the job in a few years, not because they need the money, but because, you know, they have something to offer. It's exciting. They like it. And they end up rejoining the workforce in some shape or form because, like you said,
Oh
there's only
well,
so much golf you can play.
I mean, it's yeah. I mean, my dad. We bought my dad out of the business here. It'll be about a year and a half ago, and his office is still here. He's still down here 3 times a week. I mean, it's no, he's not retired. We bought him out of the business. No, Dad, you don't have to come down if you don't want to. We can handle it. If we don't know how to do it by now, we don't deserve the business. But no, I don't ever envision myself retiring. That it's just why. What are you going to do? I love work. And I really don't even consider it work. I don't know. Well, that's what I tell my kids. I said, look, guys, find something you love doing, but be smart about it. It doesn't matter. If you love doing it, you can't make money doing it. It's a hobby. Find something you love doing that you can make money at doing. And then it's not work. Then just be the hardest, do more of it than anybody else. If you're a shirt maker, know how much money you can make per shirt. And then, okay, now you know your formula. I knew my formula. And sales now, cold calling days are done. You don't really cold call like you used to. It's just, because caller ID and cell phones killed that. But I used to know back in the day, every $100 was a PR. That was a mail out. Well, if I got 10 mail outs, I would have one sale. Well, how many sales do I want? Okay, if I need 10 mail outs for a sale, well, if I need $100 per mail out, I got to make $1,000 to make one sale. How bad do you want to make that sale? If you're twice the salesman as I am, and I want to raise the same amount of money as you, I just have to work twice as hard once you know the numbers. And that's why I love sales, because sales, it's unlimited. Doesn't matter what your education is, doesn't matter what car you drive, doesn't matter where you're from. If you can sell, you can sell, you can sell. Some people have the innate ability to sell. I think the good Lord gives everybody a couple of talents. It's your job to find them. One of the things he did, he reached out and told my family, and he blessed us with the ability to sell. And the fact that we're in something that I love doing, man, when you love what you're doing and you're selling and you have fun doing it, I couldn't dream of doing anything else. I mean, I'm an old jock. I love playing ball. And when I stopped playing ball, I had to figure out, how do you keep score? How do you keep score? It might be a little oversimplistic, and people say money doesn't buy happiness, but man, that's how I keep score is money. Because I know a whole lot more happy rich people than I do happy poor people.
This is true. Right. As we move to wrap up this interview, tell us, what are some of the biggest myths you think are out there about the oil industry?
I'm a big movie buff, and one of my favorite movies is The Usual Suspects. And one of my favorite quotes in that movie is, the greatest trick the devil ever pulled was convincing the world he didn't exist. I would say the greatest myth out there, I'd massage that quote a little bit and say the greatest trick environmentalists ever pulled was convincing the world oil was bad. Because truly, the modern world was built on oil, on American oil. And I think that's the biggest myth out there. That's the biggest untold story in our country's history, is the value that oil plays in our life and what it's done for us. I mean, watch Apollo 13. What was the one thing they had to have? Didn't matter all the calculations, none of the other stuff mattered. They had that one thing to make it back: energy. If they didn't have that energy, they wouldn't have made it back. Wouldn't have been able to thaw out the parachute. I mean, well, that's how vital energy is. That is what oil has done for our country. I mean, talk about automobiles, talk about everything else that oil has allowed us to do, in addition to the products. Heck, we made a movie here last year. I was at the office about 6:30 one morning before Christmas, just kind of going through the year-end stuff. And I was here by myself, and I was making a cup of coffee. And I'm looking around the kitchen at the office, and I don't know why I did it. I've never done it before. I've been doing this my whole life. But I said, well, that was made from oil. That was made from oil. And I just kind of went through the kitchen and itemized everything that was made from oil. And when I was done, I was blown away. I said, well, and I kind of talked to myself at that point. I said, whoa, hang on, Jay. If you're blown away with this and you've been doing this your whole life, how many other people don't know? And so we made a little movie. If we were going to call it a day without oil, however, when we got to putting it together, it would have been too long. And so we just switched it and made it a morning without oil. And we just took a couple, and we tried to do it with a little humor. And we just took a regular couple and had them wake up and then kind of set the stage where, hang on, we're going to do a morning without oil. You got to start this day over. And then we took every product from oil out of the house. And you're literally living in the Stone Age.
Absolutely. You know, one of the pictures that kind of brought that home for me is a few years ago. It's a very simple chart because you mentioned about how much is done for our country. It's more like how much it's done for the whole world. Because if you look at energy consumption per capita versus GDP per capita for all the countries in the world, it's a perfect correlation. Right? This is across continents, across cultures, languages, religions, economies, whatever. Perfect correlation between how much energy is used per capita versus how much is the GDP per capita, or how wealthy a society is. In other words, if you take energy out of a society, you get poor. It's that simple. Like there's no no way around it.
No, it's the affluence of a country is measured by how much energy each citizen uses. I think the U.S. was 1.46 gallons a day per person, if they equated it like that, and that was almost a 0.5% or half a gallon more than anybody else. I know I know exactly what you're saying. The affluence of a country is measured by how much each individual citizen uses in energy.
That's right. We have not yet, like to say it another way, we have not yet figured out, no country, no economy, no one's figured out how to be wealthy without consuming energy. Right? It's a different way to put it. Yeah.
Yeah. You can't. I mean, it's and that's where, and it's I mean, I truly believe that because really what I think you have happening, and this is just 2 cents from a good old country boy. For years, you had the left understood one thing a lot quicker than everybody else. If you control Hollywood, you control the culture, you control education, you control the information, you control Hollywood, the culture, education, the future, and if you control the media, you control the information. And they understood that first, and so we had to kind of move to the left over the years. And every time it corrected itself, it would correct, but it would be back to the left of center of where it was, and it just slowly kept moving. Well, what you've had happen over the years is, take guys like me, for example. I gave a Tea Party speech in 2012, and you noticed all the craziness going on. However, not to say anything about San Francisco and California, but it was off in California. Mm-hmm. It wasn't here. It's off in New York. It wasn't here. It didn't get my daily search, so I didn't focus any of my attention towards it. Well, now it is in my daily circle. And so you have a lot of people, a lot of businessmen that have been spending their lives not really focusing on what's going on here, because we're focusing all of our attention on making money. We're focusing all our attention on being successful. Well, now that's starting to impede it. And so now you have a lot of people that weren't paying attention before that are now paying attention, that are now realizing that 1 + 1 is not equaling 2, and we're trying to be told that it is, when it's not. It never will be. If somebody ever tries to tell you 1 + 1 is anything other than 2, they're wrong. And there's no way to justify it. I mean, it's wrong. And so you have a lot of people. And so I truly do think that the grown-ups will return. And I don't know how that's going to look at all, because I don't know where we go from here. I've never seen the country so polarized. I've never seen 2 separate groups of the same country look at one event and have completely different readings on how that event happened. I've never seen that before. It blows my mind, because a lot of times common sense. I mean, you look at the mask. I mean, doctors, they hurt themselves tremendously. I mean, they lost so much faith in the medical profession, because if Jay Burr can get on the internet and I can find not just the common sense reasons the mask didn't work, but the scientific mathematical reasons that the molecule was too small and it fit too much. Well, if I can find that, and yet you had every medical profession on the planet saying, "Oh, we have to," well, you're telling me 1 + 1 doesn't equal 2 and asking me to believe it. And they did that over and over again. you had them talking about ivermectin. Ivermectin has been distributed more than almost any drug out there. We had more of a history on ivermectin than anything. And yet they said it was dangerous? No, you could have said it doesn't work. You could have said 100 different things, but you said it was dangerous. No, it's not dangerous. Then you tried to insult people and tell us that people are taking horse, really? Or you expect us to be that ignorant? I mean, I can read too. And so it's just, you have a break from reality that it baffles the mind. And once again, that's going down a rabbit hole that doesn't really do anybody good in the investing world. I look at making money in oil, and you hate to put it this way, but regardless of how this plays out, everybody's going to still need oil. And I had one of my partners ask me the other day, he said, Jay, what happens if they take it? I said, John, if they take it, you and I got a whole lot more to worry about than the oil that they took. Because that's where it is. I mean, if it gets to that point, then there is no going back. But I can't envision that happening. We got, because by nature, people are good people. I truly believe that. I truly believe by nature, everybody wants the best for other people. And it's just, you have voices that have, you hate to say follow the money, but you have voices that if I follow the money, I see why they're stoking division. Yeah, because they make a profit in doing it. There's no profit in calm times. There's no profit in everybody getting along. And so,
Yeah,
I don't know. There's a reason old sayings are old sayings. There's truth to it. And I've heard follow the money for my entire life.
well said. RJ, I wanted to thank you for taking the time for this interview. I really enjoyed it, and have a wonderful evening.
Yeah, you as well.
Hey, thanks for joining us for another episode of the Money Seed Podcast. Please remember to click like and subscribe. It really helps spread the message to other investors, and it helps attract new viewers to the show. We appreciate your support. Thanks very much.